Hey guys, it's Matty J here. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the recent revelations surrounding Hunter Biden and kind of what I thought was really important about this story. As far as I'm concerned, all the stuff that's coming out about, oh, was that Malia Obama on the couch? Oh my God, can you believe it? Hunter Biden's out here smoking crack and getting a foot job. Oh my God, dude, he's like a crackhead. Look at the pipe in his mouth. That kind of stuff, that's total political garbage. As far as I'm concerned, that is actually a smear. What is the angle there? Is it that, you know, uh, Hunter Biden's a crackhead, therefore Joe Biden's a bad father, therefore he'll be a bad president? I suppose you can make that argument, but look, guys, if you think that the major issue here is the parental style or supervision or lack thereof of people and how they handle their family life, I don't know what you're thinking. Like really, I mean, when you think about the big fundamental issues in the election, the idea that there was some sort of populist revolt against all these institutional norms, against the idea of a globalized system, against the idea of bringing back the notions of the nation state, protecting American workers, border security, and then you think about like some of the radical proposals out there that the left has been pushing, like packing the Supreme Court, eliminating the filibuster, which would allow new states to be brought into the union, which would switch up representation in the Senate, the Electoral College, effectively making it so that you have a one-party state, pretty much instituting open border policies to accomplish much the same goals, which would fundamentally change America and the life that you're living. I mean, if you were thinking about voting for Joe Biden and then these relevant revelations came out about Hunter and you change your vote, you're tired. I don't know what to say to you, and you should stop listening right now. But, in terms of what's actually interesting, there's the whole corruption angle, and there's like Tony Babaluski, and he's, whatever his name is, he's coming out with, a bunch of documents apparently, doing some interviews with Tucker. Whatever. As far as I'm concerned, that's petty corruption. And to me, it's just not that interesting. It's like some sort of vague implication that Joe Biden was involved, or at least whether he was receiving the money or it's just his kids. I don't care. To get involved in that minutia, in my opinion, it's irrelevant. In some ways, I mean, it's obviously more significant, but in some ways, it's sort of, in my mind, is analogous to the whole Trump tax return hysteria. The whole thing was totally idiotic. Like, what did Trump's tax return in 2016, unless you're alleging there's some sort of tax fraud, which obviously, you know, the IRS didn't find. The government didn't exactly bring some sort of case against him. There's not nothing pending. It's not like he's under investigation, so far as we know, for fraud or something. So how is this relevant? And like he said, he prepaid his tax. Like my guess, had a loss. That's why he paid no tax. Like the guy's running a business. Even if he didn't, even if he was just taking advantage of the tax law, like, dude, these people wrote the tax code. They knew what they were getting into when they wrote the tax code for real estate. It's not like he perpetrated some sort of criminal act. And the fact that the New York Times is running like front page news is like, who cares? How does this have any bearing on the job he's done as president? So, in some ways, I'm thinking like, no, whether or not like, oh, with Burisma, he got $3 million, or did he get from the Chinese? Like blah blah. Who cares? You gotta look at the big picture, guys. And what I think this really has bearing on is it just helps further erode the facade that official Washington has. Because if you think about it, it's not like the individual instantiation of like, oh, did he get this payment from who? Did he get it? I mean, sure, knock your socks off if you want to look into that, but what gets me instead is like, this is how real Washington operates. You know what I mean? It's not some coincidence that everybody in Congress is a millionaire on like couple $100,000, $100,000 a year salaries. You know what I mean? Like, how's that happen? Obviously, there's a lot behind the curtain that we don't get to see, and so I think that you know the media tried to create some illusion that Trump was so outside the bounds and so uniquely corrupt and immoral and unethical in every way. The way he got his family, involved in the White House, as if Bobby Kennedy was never in the West Wing, like Ivanka and Jared, and how Jared was posing some, early on he posed some risk to national security, which somehow was related to the Russians because there was all this crap over his security clearance. This idea about Trump's hotel. He's receiving foreign emoluments. Oh no, there's a case in federal court brought by some nutcase, some crazy AG maybe. God knows. Like, they tried to portray this guy as totally outside the bounds, totally outside the norm. And then you get a look at official Washington and you're like, oh really? This is how business is done? Is reminiscent of the whole episode with Hillary Clinton, where it's like all these donations are being made to the Clinton Foundation. At the time she's Secretary of State, minute she's out, all goes away, and you're wondering like, well, what exactly is going on here? It looks like a pay for play scheme. And in another episode that we saw where the mask sort of slipped, and you see that behind this veneer of respectability is a savage, contorted face of corrupt, decadent DC politics, is with Jeffrey Epstein. And I mean, we don't even have to get into the details there, but you all know, like, Bill Clinton's flying around on this. And furthermore, what it sort of demonstrates is just how deeply enmeshed big business is with these political leaders, and they are with all these other official elites. You know what I mean? Like, look at the Jeffrey Epstein case in particular, where the guy's like, he's making multi-million-dollar donations to friggin' MIT. He's got people like in the art world who are coming, who are meeting him, and all these academics, and all the politicians are hanging out with him, and the CEO of Apollo and all these finance guys are obviously really tight with Jeffy, and it's just like, so is this really how America runs? Because if you remember back in the Obama administration, when everything was so respectable, you look at the, inside the Beltway, DC media, and that's not the image you get at all. That's not official Washington. That's not the way the media portrays them. That's not the way they portray themselves. Instead, it's, decisions are made by officials who are at the top of these scientific bureaucracies, and everything is negotiated according to these rational policy proposals and procedures that are thought out in think tanks. And you have this notion that, this is a scientific expert government that's doing everything on the up and up, and they're honorable, and these institutions are led by the best red-blooded Americans we have to offer. And immediately it becomes apparent when you see something like this. Like, dude, what Joe Biden was doing, that's small potatoes. This guy's worth like $9 million. How about these other clowns out there? You know what I mean? Who are absconding with huge fortunes. Like, how's that happen? And so you begin to question things like, well, what is really running Washington? I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. I saw this interview with Glenn Greenwald. He was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it's actually something I think is worth checking out. Glenn's obviously a man of the left, but he's a principled guy, so I respect some of the things he says. And he was talking about Chuck Schumer was talking early on in the Trump presidency during the transition. Trump came out, he hit the CIA over something, and Chuck was like, "Oh, dude, the last person you want to go after is the intelligence community." He was on MSNBC or some crap. And he's like, "The last person you want to go after is the intelligence agency because they have so many ways to get back at you." And it's like, huh? What? the intelligence agencies are going to get back at the president. Like, what is this? This is how American government works, you know? Glenn was saying it's a throwaway line, but it really just says it all. And it's true. And I think that this is another episode, not to, get mired down in the details of what payment did he get, but it just shows you this is American life. And if you, people who portrayed Trump as some uniquely, corrupt force that's just emerged and is threatening all our beloved, institutions and tearing at the very fabric of the Constitution, the presidency and the executive branch, and he's polluting all these things. That couldn't be further from the truth, dude. Look what's happening with the vice president, in the last administration. So you just see how the money class is totally interwoven with the political class and how these political decisions are made. And if you're telling me that big business like Apple and these other companies, Amazon, who knows, Google, Facebook, God knows, like any Fortune 500 company is not weighing in even more heavily than, this little peon crackhead, Hunter Biden, in terms of making U.S. policy, you're out of your friggin' mind. And you know what I mean? You got to ask yourself, like, whose interests are being taken into account when they're making these decisions? Is it the American people? Is it the average Joe? Is it the working man? Is it me and you, bro? Or is it friggin', some CEO? Some guy who's trying to get some stock options, he's trying to retire soon. Who is it? And I think the other thing, too, is it just reveals that the media, they operate as, lackeys for official Washington. And it's obvious because they've erected a massive firewall around all this information. You know what I mean? You can't get a whiff, a hint about Hunter Biden that says any implication. No, in fact, you know what? It's Russian disinformation. And we're going to trot out a bunch of friggin' former intelligence officials to tell you that. Have they looked at the material? Do they have access to classified information? No, of course not. If that doesn't reveal to you that everything is political, I God help you. You know what I mean? Because we have these people out there who truly believe that, Trump is a threat to our democracy. It's like, well, how's he a threat to our democracy? Well, look at our institutions. First of all, what do the institutions have to do with the democracy? Aren't those two things distinct? I mean, I don't get it. Democracy is the will of the people deciding something, the people's rule, and yet Trump's attacking our institutions. And why are they important? Anyway, I'll make a video about that later, but it just shows you that these supposed incorruptible institutions aren't exactly what you think, you know what I mean? And the fact that the media is totally running cover for these people, and Silicon Valley obviously censoring. If anything, the whole mold bug notion of the cathedral is obviously vindicated, you know what I mean? It's clear that everybody's playing on the same team here. And you gotta let that sink in and understand what, you and me, any average dude who just, is stuck with this reality TV star as representing just our last ditch effort, basically, at saving our country and having it not be about, global financial interests, run by freaks in Silicon Valley, what we're up against. Because, dude, it's friggin' almost insurmountable. Like, all these people, all the people in the elite, like, you hear all this populist rhetoric about the elite, and you're like, dude, really? There's got to be more nuance. But it's like, for the most part, no, not really. Not really. Because, these people are like, oh no, it's Russian disinformation. And immediately hypes up what could be like, a new Cold War with Russia, risking possible nuclear annihilation. Because you think about so many places that we're, nose to nose with the friggin' Russians. And we're going after, any boogeyman we can. It's a Russian-led white supremacist coup that they somehow, deep fakes on Hunter Biden's laptop. It's incredible the hoops that these morons jump through. You know what I mean? And the fact that, Twitter can shut down the New York Post for 2 weeks and nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? Nobody cares. There's no outcry in the streets. In fact, there's huge protests, huge riots happening right now, but that doesn't get any coverage either. because it will hurt the Democrats. It will hurt Joey. So you got to protect them. You know what I mean? Got to protect the big guy. So, guys, I would encourage you to view the Hunter Biden revelations in the following. You don't want to get sucked into sort of this gutter politics around, Hunter Biden, Malia Obama, all this palace intrigue BS, or like, it's just sort of gross. And you can't pollute your mind with this sort of crap and then miss the bigger picture. Because, where this is really relevant is the next time you see some, ass clown like Jim Comey get on TV and start preaching about our democracy and equating that with our institutions and talking about how they're spotless. You just remember how official Washington really operates, and who's really corrupt. So anyway, guys, that's about all I got. But just wanted to share with you those observations.